Welcome to this video presentation sponsored by ODTUG. We hope you enjoy this.
Hi, we're here on the last day of the Application Express and OPP conference in Atlanta with Feuerstein and Scott Spendolini, the two men who organized and helped us get all this running. What I'd like to do is ask the two of you, what were the high points of the conference in your viewpoint? What would you like to see other people share from this?
All right, I'll go first. So I'm Stephen, and just in case you didn't know, OPP stands for Oracle PL/SQL Programming. So this is the annual PL/SQL specific conference that ODTUG sponsors, and that I've been working with them on for 5 years now, which is really great. So for me, the highlight is definitely getting together with PL/SQL developers, finding out what they're doing, helping them, make more out of the language than they have been. And so I hear new stories every year, and I also get to hear Bryn Llewellyn, who's the PL/SQL product manager, and that's always great. Hear directly from the PL/SQL dev team as to what's going on.
And for me, I think the highlight was APEX 4.0. In addition to interacting with all the participants, APEX 4.0 will be released, we're told, in fiscal year 2010, which in Oracle's calendar is before June. Lots of new features, lots of innovative approaches. It's really going to change the game almost as much, I think, as APEX did, giving users who don't know jQuery and JavaScript and all the sophisticated AJAX technologies an easier way to do that and a more manageable way to do that. They won't have to write lines and lines and lines of JavaScript code. They could use some of the new functionality to have that be declarative so that as APEX 5 comes out at some point in the future, all their changes will get upgraded automatically. Things like that really, I think, are going to resonate with our user community. Also, it's always fun seeing people and just what they're doing with APEX. Every time I'm here, I learn about a new tool or a new one-off project or something new that someone's found. So I'd probably learn as much from this conference as people learn from me by listening to when I present at this conference.
Great.
Definitely the biggest challenge, I think, for PL/SQL developers is just keeping up. And sadly, keeping up is like, what did they put in 8i? Oh, really? Most developers don't even use most of the 8i features. It's really crazy. So conferences like this, a big part of conferences like this, is to make sure that people know about not only the 11 and 11.2 stuff, but what they should have been using for the last 5 years, and give them some really clear pointers about how to start applying it, leveraging the technology.
Great. Now, Scott, I haven't had a chance to talk to you since you won the Innovation Award for the ODTUG website. Congratulations. Are there similar features in Application Express that people should be using and they aren't?
I think probably one of the things that people do with APEX incorrectly when they first start out with it is they try to reinvent the wheel. The tool is very sophisticated in the sense that there's a lot of thought that was put into it. There's a lot of functionality packed into it. And people's typical approach is, if I can't find what I want, I'm just going to write my own. And that's probably the worst thing you could do with APEX. Going back to when I first started and joined the APEX team, I'll share a slightly humorous story. I thought that the tool needed the concept of lists, where I could just have 4 or 5 items in a list. Clicking one goes to one page, clicking another goes to another page. So I sat down and I put on my PL/SQL hat, which is a little bit shabby and didn't quite fit, but I wrote a bunch of PL/SQL that mimicked this list capability. And I sat down with Mike Hitchwell and I said, hey, look at this. I created lists. We really need to put this in the product. He clicked 3 times and said, we have lists. I said, oh, and our lists are better than your lists. I said, yes, they are. So the point here is, when you start using the tool, if you start writing PL/SQL code to do what you think should be in there, stop and take a look around. It probably is in there. Business logic, that's going to be in PL/SQL anyway, but lists and breadcrumbs and regions and all the conditional components, they're in the tool. It's just a matter of digging through and finding it, and that is a little tricky at first. But once you do that, you're now using the declarative structure. All the upgrades will work, the manageability goes up, the ability for other developers to pick up where you left off is great. It's one of the big strengths of APEX, is that there's really only one way to write a report. You put a report region on the page. I don't care if you write the report or if I write the report or someone brand new to the tool writes the report, it will be in the exact same place, which is huge for manageability. The SQL inside may be different, but the fact that the report is on the page in this region in the same exact place every time is huge for manageability purposes.
I think one of the points you raised there is a really good one in general, which is that you need to listen to your instinct. So when you're writing a piece of code, if you're saying to yourself, this is too complicated, surely they must have done this, chances are they have done it. And you really do need to stop and step back and look around, not only for APEX, which has all these things you can look through, I assume, I don't know, But in PL/SQL, you've got to check the documentation really thoroughly and make sure you're not reinventing the wheel. Or if you say to yourself, boy, this is really tedious, I find myself writing this over and over again, well, stop and build a piece of reusable code.
Yep.
People don't do that often enough. I think they really just say, oh, I just got to keep going, and they end up writing too much code, hard to manage, hard to debug and maintain.
A perfect example in 11G, one of my favorite features is the pivot command. Prior to pivot, you had to do the big nasty decode approach, or you had to stuff it and put it in a procedure and spit it out and things like that. I just had that requirement come up, and I had seen a demo of pivot at Open World or some conference. I thought, wow, that is cool. And
I can't wait till I can use it.
It popped into my head that this system, we're using 11G, I could use pivot. The number of lines of code that I had to write went from here to very, very powerful. But again, if you don't know it's a new feature, you're not going to know that you can use it, and you're going to go off on this path of just lots of code that's not reusable, that doesn't scale well. And I'm pretty sure if I had to write pivot, I would make it a lot less efficient than the Oracle developers.
Let's hope.
Yes.
So the bottom line is, if you can truthfully say to yourself, 100 other people who need to do this, it probably already exists. You just have to find it.
Yeah.
It's certainly, that should be the assumption. Obviously, Oracle still has an enhancement request list that must be about 10 years and 100 miles long, so there's clearly a lot that's not in there yet.
But I think we owe it to ourselves to do that research.
Right.
And it's not an excuse to say, well, I didn't know anymore. I mean, there's blogs, there's forums, there's conferences, there's so many avenues today that we didn't have 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that nothing frustrates me more than seeing the forum post, how do I install Apex? That's been said 100 times, 100 different ways, and just do the due diligence. If you say, I'm installing Apex and I ran into this error and I couldn't figure this out, and I Googled it and I got some unrelated posts for a previous version, okay, now we've got something to go on. But the community out there is ready, willing, and able to help, as evidenced by all the people who give up their time to come here. And there's really no excuse for not doing that due diligence search, because you're right, what worked in 8i may work better in 9i or worse, and it's up to you to figure that out. Otherwise, you're going to be doing yourself a huge disservice.
So what comes next? Where should we go from here? From an Application Express developer or a PL/SQL developer, where do I go next?
I'm going to the airport. We can edit that, right?
Not going to Disneyland?
That's okay, Dad. Where do we go next? Well, I think the life of a PL/SQL developer is pretty stable in a way. The language isn't changing dramatically. What they do on a day-to-day basis should change dramatically because they're not using enough of the language. But I think for most developers, it's a pretty steady grind. It's a nice grind. We have good jobs, I think for them, for the most part, it's simply a matter of constantly learning about the language, picking up more and more of it, enhancing not their skill set so much as just their comfort base of features in PL/SQL, so they can pull collections out of the hat. They can pull for all and bulk collect, and do the modern way of writing code, in which so many people still don't. And I think a key to that is really attending these conferences, joining the user groups, having access to a much wider range of resources than a lot of them do now.
Yeah, and with Apex, I think once you've mastered Apex, you're about a sixth of the way there. Apex is nothing without PL/SQL, JavaScript, AJAX, style sheets, HTML, all these other secondary technologies that you really can't be a good Apex developer until you've at least become proficient in these other technologies. No one is going to be 100% top of their game in all these technologies. I just don't think it's possible to do that and maintain that status. You might get there at one point, but then when the next release or something comes out, you've got to play catch up. So this is what the conferences are all about, bringing people together, going to something that you normally wouldn't see, going to a SQL presentation if you're here for Apex or vice versa. Every year that I've done this conference, I've had a very good turnout in the Apex for PL/SQL developers presentation that I do. And it still amazes me in a way, but it doesn't amaze me in other ways that half that room has barely or never heard of Apex. And for me, it's hard because I've got to start from scratch. I'm used to working with people who've been using it for years and years, but just showing that basic demo that we've been doing since version 1.5 blows them away. And you have to reset your expectations that they've never seen any of this. Don't start with jQuery, copy a spreadsheet, paste it, create an Oracle table, put it on the web, and that's how...
Thanks for watching this video presentation from ODTUG. For more information, go to www.odtug.com or come to our Kaleidoscope conference in 2010 at the Marriott Wardman Park in Washington, D.C.